Get ready for an electrifying weekend of EFL Championship action as we head in to round 15 of this very engaging and interesting season, with so many places up for grabs, so many teams close to so many different important positions. We head in to a really important set of fixtures. Earlier this week, Derby County secured their first away victory of the season. Plymouth Argyle secured a thrilling victory over Portsmouth, and we head into this game this weekend with the stage being set as we head towards the international break. A lot of teams could draw themselves away from relegation trouble, while other teams could find themselves in playoff contention. What are we going to see this weekend? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. But if you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell. Let me know what you predict for your teams down in the comments. Hit the like button, and shall we get into the preview? Starting off this weekend, on Friday night, we see Watford take on Oxford in what is going to be an absolutely massive game for the two sides. Watford have had a really impressive start to life in the Championship this season. Ultimately, Tom Cleverley has done an excellent job, and a manager who I thought was going to be seen as a scapegoat and used to push an agenda certainly has not been put in that position. He's had a really good run to start off this campaign, and they're heading into this game sitting just 6th in the division, which is absolutely massive. Oxford United have also had a brilliant start to life back in the Championship. If we look at them, they currently find themselves in 16th position, but they're only 4 points away from those ever-present playoff positions, 4 or 5 points away. It's a massive game for both of these two sides. We look at the injuries. Musa Sissoko is suspended for Watford. Ogbonna, Ngakia and Deli Bashiru are all missing for Watford. You look at the Oxford United injury list, and this is a bit difficult for Oxford United. Cameron Brannigan still missing. Joseph Bennett, Kyle Edwards, Matt Phillips, Paqueta and Sariki Dembele all missing ahead of this game. It's going to be really interesting to see how they get on. They've obviously been in some decent form over the course of the start of the season, but most recently have picked up a couple of defeats. Obviously, the same can be said for Watford. 3 defeats in the last 5. Defeats against Luton Town, Leeds United and Swansea City. But in the middle of that, there was 2 big wins versus Sheffield Wednesday 6-2 and against Blackburn Rovers with a 1-0 win. You look over to Oxford, 1-0 win versus Hull City most recently, but before that, 2 back-to-back defeats versus Swansea and Sunderland. You look at the 2 draws versus Derby County and West Brom, really decent results. For me, I'm going to go with a Watford victory. I think it's going to be 3-2 Watford. I think they're just going to have a little bit too much for Oxford in this one. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Let me know what you expect to come out of this game. For me, 3-2 Watford. Next up then is Cardiff City versus Blackburn Rovers at the Cardiff City Stadium. Now, Cardiff City have been on a massive upturn in form recently, but ultimately they still have an injury list which is going to see them struggle just a little bit. Now, Blackburn Rovers also have injuries of themselves, but John Eustace has done an excellent job so far this campaign. You look at the Cardiff City injury list with Aaron Ramsey, Alex Robertson, Joe Rawls, Keona Tete and Rotaro Sonoda all missing. Keona Tete, I believe, made his return to competitive action for Cardiff's under-21s over the course of the last couple of weeks. You look then at Blackburn Rovers, Koza Dewberry missing, Hayden Carter, Scott Wharton and Jack Gillesson all missing for them. We look at the league table now, and Blackburn Rovers, who were pushing really hard in this top 6 earlier on in the division, they've lost a few games on the trot and now find themselves down in 10th position. Obviously not where they want to be, but this is the Championship. A couple of bad games, you slip right the way down. A couple of good games, you go all the way up, as you can see by Millwall. We'll get into that a little bit later on. You go down to Cardiff City. 3 wins in their last 5 has propelled them from the bottom of the table to 21st. They're only 7 points away from the playoffs, which is an absolute madness to think about with how tight this division is so far this season. We go and look at the recent results, and both teams head into this one off the back of defeat. Luton Town obviously beating Cardiff, and then Blackburn Rovers were beaten 2-0 by Stoke City. They've also been beaten recently by Sheffield United and Watford, but before that a draw to West Bromwich Albion and a win against Swansea. Cardiff City beat Norwich, Pompey and Plymouth Argyle on the way to this game, with a draw versus West Bromwich Albion in there as well. Lots of teams seem to draw with West Brom. Now, heading into this game, I personally think that Cardiff City are going to be the team to come out on top. I think Omar Rizza has done a really, really good job since taking over in that interim capacity. I do think he's probably going to be up for the conversation of potentially getting the job permanently. Will it be the right decision? You'll have to let me know down in the comments, but I certainly think he should be up for that job because I think he's done an excellent job so far. For me, I'm going to go Cardiff City 2, Blackburn Rovers 0. I just can't see Blackburn Rovers being able to spin it around and pick up the 3 points in this one. I think Cardiff City have been the better team across the course of the last 5. I think they've got some really good players as well who are finally coming into form. It's going to be massive for Cardiff City. Let me know your predictions down in the comments. Next up then, we face Middlesbrough against Luton. Another early kickoff on Saturday morning. This one is going to be an interesting one. Luton Town and Middlesbrough, both teams sort of in that position where, in my opinion, I don't think they've been as good as they anticipated they would be. Obviously, Luton Town sitting down in 19th place, Middlesbrough sitting in 8th. But for me, I don't think either of these two sides have been anywhere near as good as they probably anticipated coming into the season. Middlesbrough have dropped some really big points in games which you probably would have anticipated them to win coming into the season, but ultimately they haven't been able to. Now, you look at the injury list, Bonungra, Gilbert, Lenihan, Engel, Smith, all missing for Middlesbrough. You look at Luton Town, Anderson, Burke, Walters, all missing as well. And it's going to be an interesting one because you look at the last 5 games for these two sides and it's identical in terms of results. 2 wins, a draw and 2 defeats. Middlesbrough beating QPR and Sheffield United, but losing to Coventry and Bristol City. Norwich City versus Middlesbrough was a 3-3 draw. You look then over to Luton Town, a 3-0 win versus Watford, 1-0 versus Cardiff City, a 1-1 draw with West Brom and 2 defeats versus Coventry City and Sunderland. It's one of those for me where I think these two sides, obviously, as I've said, don't think have done as well as they anticipated. I thought Middlesbrough would be up sort of in this sort of region, sort of 26, 27 points, but they've dropped some big points against the likes of Derby and Pompey, as I mentioned earlier. But a win could see them propel as high as 4th position, which I think is absolutely massive. Now, obviously, you go to Luton Town, they really need to put another win on the board. They've sort of been turning their form around recently, but they seem to have a couple of good games and then drop off again, and I'm hoping this isn't one of those drop-off games for Luton Town. For me, I think it's going to be a draw. I'm going 0-0 Middlesbrough-Luton. I just think both of these sides haven't quite been up to scratch yet. And when we look at goals scored, it's 18-16. And obviously both teams 16-21 when it comes to conceding. Me personally, I just can't see this game being anything other than a draw. 0-0 for me, Middlesbrough versus Luton. Next up then, we have Stoke City versus probably the most informed side in the division in Millwall at the Bet365. Now, Stoke City have back-to-back victories after beating Derby and I believe Blackburn Rovers, and Millwall are coming into this off the back of, I think it's 4 wins in a row. Very, very good performances, and it just shows the difference in this league. A good run, 4 wins in a row for Millwall, 5 unbeaten, 22 points they're now on, and they picked up 12 of them in the last 4 games, which is absolutely ridiculous. It's a massive upturn in form for Neil Harris and his men. You go down to Stoke City, back-to-back wins, and they obviously now find themselves in 18th, in 14th position on 18 points. It's a massive set. It's a massive set of performances from these two sides. Obviously, one of these two sides, they're either going to lose or they're going to draw heading into this one. And you look at the injury list, Ben Pearson, Bosson Llewell, Lyndon Gooch, Sam Gallagher, some players who, in my opinion, can have a really big impact on this Stoke City side. You also then look at the injuries for Millwall to Billy Mitchell and Tom Bradshaw. In my opinion, players who do have an impact on that Millwall team. You look at the recent form. You look at the sides they've beaten as well. Plymouth Argyle, Swansea, Burnley, Leeds. Those last two are massive, massive wins. You then look at Stoke City, obviously beating Blackburn, Rovers and Derby County, but defeats versus Southampton and Sheffield United with a draw to Bristol City. It's going to be a very interesting one, this one. Obviously, a win for Millwall puts them on 25 points, and a win for Stoke City would put them on 21. It's a very interesting fixture for me. I'm going to go with a 2-1 victory for the away side. Millwall coming away with 3 points, 2-1 for me. Next up then, we see Leeds United taking on QPR at Elland Road in the first 3 o'clock kickoff of the weekend. It's going to be a very, very intriguing game, this one. Obviously, QPR nowhere near the level that they showed early on in the season. They've had a real drop-off in performances, in form, in standards, in my opinion, and it really shows in their league position, which we'll get into in a minute. You look at the injury list: Ethan Ampadu, Gruev, Ramazani for Leeds United, and then for QPR, you've got Harrison Ashby, Jack Colback, Kenneth Powell, and Michael Fry. And for me, these two sides, Leeds United have been excellent. I think they're one of the teams that will probably go on and put real pressure on the Sunderlands, the Sheffield Uniteds, and obviously you have to look at that at the caveat of Sheffield United have had 2 points deducted this season. You go down to QPR, way down at the bottom of the table. They're really losing touch with safety, which is 5 points away now for QPR, and it's 6 points for Pompey. It's going to be a really interesting turn of events in these games. Obviously, you look at the recent form of the two sides. QPR, no wins, 2 defeats, 3 draws. Losing to Middlesbrough and Portsmouth. Draws with Coventry, Burnley and Sunderland, which are really good draws in my opinion. But ultimately, they're not picking up enough wins. They're not picking up enough points. And is it going to be a situation where Marty Cifuentes is under pressure? We've had Derby County fans talk about Paul Warne being under pressure. Mark Robbins has recently lost his job as I'm recording this video. We've obviously seen other managers go as already this season. So it is a question mark over Marty Cifuentes. You look at Leeds United then, the 1-0 defeat to Millwall, 3-0 win against Plymouth Argyle, 2-1 versus Watford and 2-0 versus Sheffield United, with a 0-0 draw versus Bristol City in there as well. Obviously, we've looked at the league table. It's going to be a really important game for Leeds if they want to be really challenging at the top end of this division. I personally can't see past a Leeds United win if I'm thinking with my brain, but my heart wants to tell me the underdog is going to pick up 3 points in this one. I'm going to go with a 1-0 win for Queen's Park Rangers. I just think there's an opportunity there for QPR. Not because Leeds United are bad, but I just think at some point they've got to spin this around. And the best way to do it is beating one of those teams at the top. It puts other teams on notice. Let's see what QPR can do. Let's see what Leeds can do. Let me know your predictions down below. Next up then, Norwich City face up against Bristol City. Both teams face some suspended men. There's some injuries as well to contend with, but I think both of these sides are probably in different positions to that they expected. You look at the long injury list for both sides and some of the quality that is missing for both of these two sides as well, and you can really see why performances may have slipped just a little bit. Kenny McLean and Rob Dickey suspended on either side. Angus Gunn, Slimani, Barnes, Sargent, Gibbs, Nunes and Hernandez all injured for Norwich City. Benarous, Tanner, Williams, McCrory, Bell and Scotty Twine all missing for Bristol City. We look at the league table, both of these two sides sitting really close together. Norwich City on 18 points, Bristol City on 19, but both teams head into this one off the back of a defeat. Now, I think both of these two teams haven't necessarily been putting in the performances that you would have expected of these two teams over the course of the season so far. There certainly have been times where they've played at the level I anticipated, but certainly nowhere near this of where they are now. I thought both teams will be pushing playoff positions when you look at the money spent, the quality and the squad. Now, Norwich come into this off the back of 2 defeats versus Cardiff City and Sheffield. Wednesday before that, 3 back-to-back draws, Stoke, Preston and Middlesbrough. Bristol City come into this off the back of defeat versus Sheffield United. Wins surrounding the 2 draws, beating Preston, North End and Middlesbrough, with draws versus Leeds United and Stoke City. Now, I personally think they're really good draws and some really good results in there. Obviously, looking at the league table, Bristol City can find a way into the playoffs, should other results go their way, Norwich City could end up just outside, obviously. And it's one of those for me where I think this game is a really, really important one for that fight for the playoffs. I think we're starting to see sort of, I don't even necessarily want to call it a divide in the league because I think it's really close. Obviously, all the way down to 22nd position, there's just 7 points separating, 5th and 22nd, which is ridiculous to think about. But what we're going to start to see now is the top three sort of pushing themselves away, maybe the top four. We'll see after Burnley play West Brom tonight as I'm recording this. You also then sort of look at the bottom two and they're sort of losing touch, and it's important that these two sides sort of stay in and around this playoff area for the second half of the season. We're obviously in November, heading towards that really busy December period where you have a ton of games over the course of the space of 2-3 weeks. And it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. For me, I think Bristol City are going to win this one. I think it's going to be a 2-1 victory for Bristol City. Let me know your thoughts and predictions down in the comments. If you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and turn on that notification bell to stay tuned for all of my latest Derby County and EFL content heading your way across the course of this season. You'll obviously see a new logo up on my left hand side here with Kitbag. We've become Kitbag affiliates. Make sure you check out the link down in the description for all your sporting goods. You can obviously get a range of championship kits as well as those for the Premier League and other divisions as well. There's also some NBA stuff on there as well, so make sure you go ahead and go and check that out. And shall we get back to the previews? Portsmouth host Preston North End in a 3 o'clock kickoff at Fratton Park. It's going to be a very, very interesting one. Portsmouth obviously languishing down at the bottom of the table. Are they going to be able to turn it around? Are they going to be able to get themselves back in the fight? We're starting to see a divide build across the course of the division. You obviously look down at the bottom. I think Pompey are 6 points away from safety at the moment, and that comes from the fact they've just not won enough games. You look at the injury list for both sides. You've got Colby Bishop obviously with his heart issues, which you have to feel sorry for Portsmouth, a massive player for them over the course of the last 18 months, and unfortunately that issue with his heart has kept him out for a long time, and hopefully he will be able to come back and be the player he was before. You obviously look at the likes of Shaughnessy, Boat, Farrell and Paddy Lane all missing as well. Go to Preston North End, a Somalik missing. I believe he's the player that bit someone. Was it against Blackburn Rovers? I believe that's him. You've then got Ched Evans, Patrick Bauer, Robert Brady and Will Keane all missing as well. You go to the recent form of both sides and it's not great. It isn't great at all. Pompey winning 1 of their last 5. Preston North End no win in 5. Defeats for Portsmouth though against Cardiff, Sheffield Wednesday and Plymouth. A draw with Hull City in there, which is a good result. Hull City are a decent side. You then go over to Preston North End, losing to Arsenal and Bristol City. Draws versus Sunderland, Plymouth Argyle and Norwich City. So it's not as if it's awful for Preston. They've played some difficult sides, but you look at the places in the division. Pompey obviously 6 points away from safety right now. Preston North End sort of level on terms with that relegation zone. Obviously if the season was to end today they'd stay up, but it's certainly not where you want to be at this point of the season. Both of these two sides are going to want to go into the international break on a high. Pompey obviously more so because they're going to want to be going, oh, we can get out of this relegation zone, we can do it. And it's one of those for me where they're really close. They're really, really close, Pompey, and they have put in some good performances, and I think they've just been a little bit unlucky. The defeat versus Plymouth Argyle, I think Plymouth just wanted it a little bit more, and I think that's something that you get from a Wayne Rooney side is work rate and effort, and I think for these two sides it's going to be very, very difficult. In my opinion, I think it's probably going to be a score draw, probably a 1-1. It's going to be interesting to see what does happen. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Let me know your predictions. Let's get into the next one. Next up then, we have Sunderland facing up against Coventry. Coventry City recently sacked manager Mark Robins, and that came after a defeat to Derby County. Derby County secured their first away win and ended a manager's spell. It's very interesting for me because I don't think Coventry were bad. I think they were very, very unlucky in the game. I'm not necessarily saying either team created an abundance of chances, but it wasn't as if Derby outplayed Coventry, and I actually thought Coventry were unlucky not to take something from the game. Had they picked up a draw, would it have been a sacking? Probably not. Now, obviously, Sunderland, you can talk about them all day with them sitting at the top of the division. You look at their injury list as well. Some big players in there with the likes of Patterson, Poveda, obviously Bellingham suspended after that red card, which I thought was a little bit harsh. You look at the injury list for Coventry City: Bidwell, Sims, Wilson, Allen, Rodriguez as well. It's difficult. It's very difficult. And as Championship managers, they don't get a lot of time. Paul Warne is now the longest serving Championship manager, and he's only been at Derby County for just over 2 years. And I think it speaks volumes. You look at the recent form of these two sides: 5 unbeaten for Sunderland, 2 draws in their recent games, but before that they beat Oxford, Luton and Hull City. You look then at Coventry City: it's 2 wins, a draw and 2 defeats, which in my opinion isn't a bad run. They lost to Derby County, they lost to Preston, a draw versus QPR, but wins against Luton and Middlesbrough. In my opinion, it's not terrible, but it's the league position that I'm guessing is the problem for the board. 17th place, 15 points, level on points with the relegation zone. But they're just 7 points away from being in 5th place. They're 3 results away from being in the playoffs. And obviously you look at Sunderland leading the way, 30 points from 14 games, just over 2 points a game. It's massive. I think Sunderland have done really, really well this season. It's going to be interesting to see how long they can keep it going for. They've put in some really good performances so far. Will they be able to keep it going for the rest of the season? Looking ahead to this one, I personally think Sunderland are going to come away with 3 points. I think it's going to be an easy win for them. Losing Mark Robins is going to be a massive thing for Coventry City. Obviously, as we're talking right now, they haven't announced a replacement. They obviously only announced the sacking, as I'm talking right now, a few hours ago. So it's one of those which is going to be really difficult. I think Sunderland are going to win this one 3-0. I think it's a huge game for Sunderland to try and put some daylight between themselves and obviously Leeds United in 3rd place. It's obviously currently a 4-point gap. Will they be able to make it a little bit more than that? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Let me know your predictions. For me, Sunderland 3, Coventry 0. We have the Sheffield derby then at Bramall Lane. Sheffield United versus Sheffield Wednesday. Who's going to come out on top? I honestly couldn't tell you heading into this one. I think it's a very, very difficult game for both sides. I think Sheffield United have been really, really good across the course of this season so far, obviously sitting 2nd in the division. Sheffield Wednesday have had ups, they've had downs. They've been a little bit all over the place, but what's going to happen? We look at the injury list: Tom Davies for Sheffield United, but I believe I heard Chris Wilder talking about him being back. But you can let me know down in the comments. You look at Sheffield Wednesday: Nathaniel Chalobah, Olaf Kabaki. You look at Ehikwe, Ben Hamer, and Femiwu, all missing heading into this one. You look at the last 5 games. Sheffield United, 3 wins on the spin after 2 back-to-back defeats. Leeds United and Middlesbrough defeating Sheffield United. But Sheffield United beat Stoke, Blackburn and Bristol City in some massive, massive games. You then look at Sheffield Wednesday: 0-0 draw with Swansea, 2-1 win against Pompey, 1-1 versus Brentford, a defeat 6-2 versus Watford, which Watford are a very good side, and I don't think you can say much about it. You then look at Sheffield Wednesday and Norwich, 2-0 win versus Norwich, as I just said, obviously. You then go ahead and look at the league table. Sheffield United sitting 2nd on 28 points. Sheffield Wednesday on 18 in 15th place. They've not been awful. They're still in with a shot at the playoffs. I think every team down to 22nd is still well within a shot of getting into those playoff positions this season. Obviously, in my opinion, a lot's going to change over the course of the next 6 weeks before we hit January 1st because of, obviously, the busy schedule you get across Christmas. But you can obviously let me know your thoughts down in the comments. For me, I think Sheffield Wednesday are going to win this one. I think it's going to be a 2-1 win, but I wouldn't be surprised if it ended up 0-0. I think what you've got to see with Sheffield United is they try. If you can't win, don't lose. And I think it shows in the results this season. Obviously, they'd be level on points if it wasn't for their points deduction. Looks as if their takeover is about to go through as well. So, massive, massive moment for Sheffield United. Massive, massive moment for Sheffield Wednesday. Who's going to come out on top? For me, I'm going Sheffield Wednesday with a 2-1 win. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. On Sunday then, we have 3 games. Hull City take on West Brom in this one. And it's a big game, in my opinion, for West Brom. Mainly I think Hull City have been fairly decent, but you look at where they sit in the division, and ultimately that is why I don't think this is a big game for them. I think it's huge for West Brom. They have the opportunity to go up to 4th place. Obviously, as we're talking right now, Burnley and West Brom have to play each other. I think it's tonight they play each other. And I think, obviously, if West Brom go into the playoffs tonight, it is a huge game for them at the weekend, because they could get themselves into that top 3 and get themselves in touching distance. And that is massive for me, and it's massive for West Brom. I think Carlos Corberán has done an amazing job. You look at the injury list: Daryl Dike, Cal Bartley, Patrick McNair, Semi Ajayi, some really, really big players for them. You look at Bartley and Ajayi have been huge players for West Brom across the course of the last 4 or 5 years, really. If I've got my numbers right and am I thinking right, they've been at West Brom for ages. You then look at the injury list for Hull City: Smith, Rushworth, Cartwright, Miller, Melhelm, Longman, Alzate and Latuula. And there are obviously some big misses in there, but you look at the recent results. West Brom have picked up 5 draws in a row. Now, not many teams do 5 draws in a row, but West Brom, one of them teams. If you can't win, don't lose. As I said with Sunderland and Sheffield United, and I think that shows in their draws. And you then go and look at the Hull City results: 2 defeats surrounded by 3 back-to-back draws. And obviously, it's going to be a difficult game for both of these two sides. West Brom could be up in 4th place by the time they actually play. Hull City could obviously find themselves up as high as 12th, if they win 6-0, which probably isn't going to happen. But there is that possibility. This game is massive at the weekend, but what's more important is the West Brom game tonight as I'm recording this. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. For me, I think West Brom will win this game versus Hull City, no matter what happens versus Burnley. But it's massive. It's a really, really important set of fixtures. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. I think West Brom are going to win this one 2-1 against Hull City at the MKM. And to round off this weekend, Burnley face up against Swansea City in my opinion, what will be a massive game. Obviously, as I've just spoke about with the West Brom game, Burnley still have to play West Brom this week for the midweek fixtures. And it's going to be a big game. That midweek game. You obviously then look at this one with Swansea City, and I think Burnley could find themselves at risk of falling out of the playoffs for the international break, or at risk of going into the top 2, depending on what happens versus West Brom, obviously. Now, you look at the injury list. It's a massive one for Burnley. Ramsey, Delacroix, Ekdal, Worrell, Bayer, Forster, Benson, Trezor and Redmond all missing. Swansea City got Ginley, Eom and Fisher all missing as well. You look at the recent form, and realistically, I think Swansea City come into this in better form. Yes, they've lost an extra game versus Blackburn and Millwall, but they've won their last 2 versus Oxford and Watford. A draw versus Sheffield Wednesday in there as well, compared to Burnley, who have won 1 of their last 5. 3 draws in there versus Preston, Hull and QPR, with a defeat to Millwall over the course of this week. Well, was it the weekend? But massive, massive moment in the league table, this one. Obviously, a win versus West Brom puts them on 26 points, which gives them the opportunity in this game to go into the top 2. But a loss puts them at the responsibility of whatever happens in the next game. So it's going to be huge. It's going to be a massive, massive moment at Turf Moor. Are Burnley going to be able to secure 3 points today versus West Brom? Or are they going to fail to do so? And I think that's what plays into this one. Ultimately, I think Burnley will come away with a point in this game versus Swansea City. I think it's going to be a 2-2 draw. I think it's going to be an entertaining game between the two sides. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Let me know your predictions. Shall we end this video? We've gone through all the games heading into this upcoming weekend of fixtures. Some absolutely massive ones at play. Now, if you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell to stay tuned for all of my latest Derby County and EFL content heading your way. Obviously, check out Kitbag over here and down in the description for all of your sporting goods. It'll probably land you on a Derby County page, but don't worry. Scroll through the site. Let me know if you find anything exciting. Make sure to use code CROSSBAR at checkout. It will give you a discount on selection of items, not on everything. But make sure you go and check it out. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next one. Make sure to go and find me on TikTok, pictured here, and Twitter, pictured here. These are the places where I'll keep you all up to date with all my upcoming videos and my thoughts and feelings around the Formula 1 and Football Week.